My name is Natalie Carter. I used to think I had the perfect marriage. A devoted husband, a cozy home in the suburbs of Chicago, and a best friend of 15 years. But then a message at nearly 3 a.m. changed everything. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't an apology. Just a notification from our car insurance app saying my husband's car had been parked overnight outside a strange hotel. And him still asleep beside me, or at least I thought he was. What would you do if you found out your husband and best friend were in the same place at midnight? Would you confront them right away, or stay silent and start collecting proof? I chose silence, but not to forgive, because everything was just beginning. And I'll tell you every step, every piece of evidence, every breakdown, until I'm the last one standing. I left that hotel like someone walking out of a dream. No rage, no tears, only silence, curling itself around the space where love once made a home. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call anyone. The hum of the tires against the empty road said everything I couldn't. I remembered that hotel, a charming little boutique spot on the west side of the city, known for its rooftop bar and river view. Ethan and I had shared wine there on our 4th anniversary. He said the place reminded him of Paris. I just remembered being happy. Now he'd brought another woman there, the same woman who stood by my side at my wedding, Madison Blake. Her name now felt like a cold blade to the heart. She was someone I had trusted more than my own family, the first person I called when my mother died, the one who drove through the night to be with me after my miscarriage at 31. And now she was the one stepping out of that hotel in the middle of the night, holding the red velvet box that once carried the ruby necklace Ethan gave me last Christmas. Strangely, the first wave of pain didn't come from Ethan. It came from Madison. I could almost understand a husband losing his way, briefly. But a best friend? Someone who knew every scar I carried? Someone who had seen me at my lowest and still chose to trample the trust between us? That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. And that's what broke my heart the most. I walked into the house before dawn. Ethan was already home, or rather, already in bed, breathing steadily like he'd never left. I didn't pull the covers. I didn't check his phone. I just sat on the edge of the bed, hands ice cold, with one question echoing in my mind. What am I going to do now? I used to think that if I were ever betrayed, I'd scream, break things, throw a fit. But the truth is, I didn't have the strength for any of that. This pain didn't explode like fireworks. It seeped in, cold and persistent, like a December fog. The next day, I went to work like usual. I wore a white blouse, dabbed some blush on, smiled at my coworkers. No one noticed I hadn't slept. No one asked if I was okay. Maybe I was better at hiding than I thought. Or maybe I was just living like a ghost. That afternoon, I drove to an old cafe near the park, the one where Madison and I used to sit for hours after work, sharing everything from random gossip to distant dreams. I sat at our usual table, ordered the same drink, sugar-free hazelnut latte, like an old ritual, and stared at the empty chair across from me. Madison used to sit there, laughing, golden sunlight catching her blonde hair. Back then, I thought I was lucky to have a friend like her. I didn't know I was sitting across from the person who would take everything from me. We once swore we'd never let a man come between us. She said that after I broke up with my first love and found out he had flirted with her. I'd never betray you for a guy, Madison had said, and I believed her. Even now, I can still hear that voice. Warm, certain, protective. And now, that very woman was planning a future with my husband. That evening, as Ethan sat in front of the TV watching sports like nothing had happened, I stepped into the kitchen, washed glasses, wiped counters. Every movement mechanical, familiar, hollow. He asked about my day, shared office stories, told me he loved me. I smiled. I knew I was living in a parallel world, where everything looked the same, but I no longer believed any of it. Maybe what hurt the most wasn't the betrayal, but the way they made me doubt my own instincts. That feeling of loneliness in the very house I called home. I started each morning with a black coffee and a fake smile, greeted Ethan like nothing had happened, kissed his cheek like I still loved him, sent him off like I didn't know he was texting my best friend just minutes after shutting the door behind him. I kept wondering how long it had been going on. Was it when I was bedridden with the flu and Madison brought soup, smiling and saying, "Go back to sleep, I'll take care of Ethan"? Or the time I was away on a 3-day work trip and Ethan canceled his own at the last minute because he missed me too much? Disjointed memories kept flooding me, and each one made me feel like I was drowning in ice water. I knew I couldn't go on like this. But I also knew I couldn't react like someone out of control. If there was one thing Ethan and Madison never expected, it was that I, Natalie, always calm, always rational, would become the silent observer, remembering everything. That night, after Ethan went to bed, I sat alone in the office. No lights, just the dim glow of my computer screen. In the quiet darkness, I opened a blank document and typed 3 words. The plan begins. I started by changing the password to the old email account Ethan still used for secondary logins. I had helped him set it up years ago for banking services. I knew the original password, and I knew he never changed it. The first thing I found was hotel booking receipts. Not just 1, but 4 over the past 3 months. Name on the reservation, Ethan Carter. Note, no invoice needed. I saved them all. Screenshots, confirmation codes, check-in times. Then I accessed the cloud storage we used for household bills. Ethan didn't realize I still had access. There I found temporary financial statements, including a payment to Madison & Co. jewelry right after Madison's birthday. I didn't touch his phone, didn't check his messages, didn't confront him. I let him think I suspected nothing, because only then could I uncover everything. A week later, I drove to Travis's house. My cousin, the one who fixed every family computer since 9th grade. He now worked in cybersecurity for a major financial firm in Boston. "Do you remember last year when Ethan said we didn't need home security cameras?" I asked casually. Travis looked up from his coffee, eyes darkening. "I remember. He said your neighborhood was safe enough." I smiled softly. "I've changed my mind." Travis didn't ask another question. He leaned back slightly. "How invisible are we talking?" "The kind only I know exists." We spent the entire day setting them up. Ultra-miniature cameras, hidden in the living room wall clock, the nightstand lamp, a hollowed-out book near the kitchen shelf. All footage would be automatically uploaded to a private server only I had access. No wires, no trace. Ethan would never know. Travis didn't speak during installation, but when I walked him to the door, he squeezed my shoulder and said one thing. "No matter what happens, I'm on your side." I felt my throat tighten. In the quiet storm I was living through, that was the one anchor keeping me from going under. That night, Ethan came home late. Shirt wrinkled, eyes slightly red. He said it was overtime. I made spaghetti, like usual, added his favorite white wine. He talked about work, and I gave the kind of smile that didn't reach my eyes. When he went to shower, I wiped his collar with a white towel. A faint lipstick stain appeared. Deep red, not my shade. I folded the towel, placed it in the nightstand drawer, and recorded the time in my phone. I knew I had entered a war where I had to pretend to be the clueless wife, while documenting every little slip. I began to understand why so many women don't walk away from a marriage the moment they know the truth. It's not about love, not even fear, it's because leaving the right way takes time. I couldn't rush, I couldn't afford mistakes. Because I wasn't just walking away from a man, I was leaving behind a life I'd built for over a decade. Everything was in his name, the house, the cars, the investments, the insurance, even the phone number. If I disappeared into the night with a suitcase and a shattered heart, I'd lose everything, including myself. So I began to pull away, quietly. I opened a separate account under my maiden name, Natalie Brennan. I told the banker it was for personal investment savings, smiled like a woman preparing for independence. No one questioned it. I started transferring $500 a week, then $1,000, then $2,000, all from the shared expenses Ethan never tracked. Next came the intangible things, yet more important than money. Documents, birth certificate, house deed, insurance papers, my old savings book from before the marriage. I quietly gathered them into a small case and hid it in the trunk of my car. It felt like I was secretly reclaiming fragments of my life from the hands of a thief. I rented a small storage unit about 25 minutes from home under Travis's name. There I left copies of every important document. I also began sending sentimental items there, my parents' wedding photo, the sweater my mother knitted when I started college, the rare book collection I had spent years saving up for. Each item was packed in silence like a farewell ritual witnessed by no one but me. Ethan seemed unaware of everything. He still sent "I love you" texts during lunch break, still brought home my favorite blueberry tart every weekend, still lay beside me each night, back turned, phone face down on the nightstand. I looked at him, wondering, had there ever been a moment when he felt guilty? Or had I, in his mind, become the kind but boring wife, the understanding but no longer attractive woman? So he felt entitled to deceive me without remorse? One night I heard him on the phone. His voice was low, tense, but the bedroom camera picked up just enough. She doesn't suspect a thing, still cooks, still smiles, still the same. Then a quiet chuckle. We just need a few more weeks. Everything will fall into place. I sat in the living room then, clutching a wine glass so tightly I nearly shattered it. We, meaning him and Madison, were planning to let things fall into place with my life? With the home I once dreamed of raising children in? With the bed I once believed was safe? I knew then it was time I had legal protection. The next morning I called Sophie Dean, an old classmate from law school who is now a respected divorce attorney in Chicago. We met at a small cafe near the river. I wore a beige sweater, my hair neatly tied, my face composed, as if it were just a casual meeting between two accomplished women. "Long time no see," Sophie smiled. I didn't smile back. I simply placed a folder on the table. Inside were photos of Ethan and Madison leaving the hotel, credit card receipts, money transfer emails, audio clips from the bedroom camera. "It's not suspicion anymore," I said quietly. Sophie opened the file, her brow tightening slightly. After a few silent minutes, she closed it and spoke in a calm, steady tone. "You've got two choices. Settle quietly, keep everything in the dark, or go straight to court. With this evidence, the judge will likely rule in your favor. But you need to be ready. Ethan won't be the nice guy anymore. I don't need nice, I need justice." We sat together for 2 hours, mapping out a strategy. I learned things I'd never considered before. If I could prove Ethan used shared assets to support his mistress, I could claim those amounts. If I could prove he forged my signature in selling the cabin, I could press charges for fraud. I also learned that I needed to stay calm for a little while longer. One slip, a glance, a vague comment was enough to tip Ethan off that I knew. And then he'd erase everything, deny it all, vanish. But I wouldn't let that happen. I had spent a lifetime loving. Now I would spend the rest protecting myself. That night I lay beside Ethan like always. He slept soundly, back turned. I looked at his spine, strong, familiar, but now it felt unbearably distant. I thought about all the small things I had forgiven. The unexplained late nights. The times Madison just happened to show up when I wasn't home. The times I told myself, "Don't be paranoid. They wouldn't do that to you." And now I understood. It wasn't that I was naive, maybe I didn't look away out of ignorance, but out of love that was too afraid to lose what it had. But from now on, I would keep my eyes open, and I would remember every single thing. I began pulling away. No drama, no tears, only silence, carefully calculated. The truth is, when you still love someone, you fight to hold on. But once you realize you're living with a stranger, the wisest thing to do is prepare your own exit. Before you're pushed out of the home you once called sanctuary. That night, once Ethan was asleep, I quietly got up, opened my personal laptop, and logged into the old bank account I had before marriage, an account under my maiden name. Natalie Brennan, still active, though long forgotten. I reactivated everything, slowly transferred small amounts from the shared account each week, labeled as personal expenses, just enough to avoid suspicion. After a month, I had nearly $8,000 in there. Not much, but enough to know, if everything collapsed, I wouldn't be empty-handed. I no longer felt safe sharing a roof with a man quietly building a new life, without me in it. I needed space, somewhere to breathe, to think, to gather myself. But I knew if I rented a place in my own name, Ethan would find out. So I called Travis, my cousin, the one who had secretly helped install the security system in our house. I need a place, I said, voice low, not too far, but it has to be completely private. He didn't ask questions. 3 days later, Travis sent me the details of a small studio on the 3rd floor of a building near the university, where the landlord agreed to lease it under Travis's name, with payments coming from my account. I went to see it on a Friday afternoon, telling Ethan I had a client meeting. The apartment was modest, but bright, with a balcony overlooking a row of maple trees turning color. When I stepped inside, I didn't know why, but tears started falling. Not from sadness, but relief. I'd found a place to retreat. Over the next 2 weeks, I slowly moved sentimental items there. My mother's old typewriter, the family photo albums, printed copies of the letters my father wrote before he passed. Each item was carefully wrapped and labeled, as if I were evacuating a war zone. At home, I still played the part of the loving wife. I cooked dinner, smiled at Ethan's office stories. I even let him hold me each morning as if nothing were cracking beneath the surface of our peace. But at night, when darkness filled the room, I saw it more clearly than ever. I was living inside a calculated lie, and if I didn't reclaim control soon, I'd disappear into it completely. I needed to reach Madison. Not as an angry woman, but as a fragile, confused wife, searching for something to hold on to. I needed to see how she would respond if she believed I still knew nothing. I called her on a Monday afternoon. My voice trembled just enough to send the message of someone unsteady. "Madison," I whispered, "are you free tonight?" "What's going on?" Her voice wavered slightly, cautious. I don't know who else to talk to," I said, trying to steady my breath. "Ethan's been different lately, distant. I'm afraid maybe he's cheating." Madison went quiet. 1 beat. Then 2. And then she spoke in that familiar, gentle tone. "Oh, Natalie, I'm so sorry to hear that. Where are you? I'll come over right away." I hung up and sat motionless in my own apartment, the place where I once dreamed of raising future children. Now I was planning my exit like someone on the run, while the very person who betrayed me was about to sit in my living room with a sympathetic face and kind words. I stood up, fixed my hair, dabbed on a pale shade of lipstick, and prepared to welcome the woman I once loved like a sister. The same woman whose feigned concern I'd now used to expose everything. That evening, Madison arrived earlier than I expected. Her hair was still soft blonde waves. She wore the same cream-colored faux fur coat, and those heels I gave her for her birthday 3 years ago. I saw her through the crack in the curtain, and my heart clenched. Not because I still believed she was my friend, but because I had once loved her so deeply I never imagined a day would come when I'd look at her as an enemy in disguise. I opened the door with a deliberately tired smile. "It's colder than I thought," Madison said, hugging her arms. "Are you okay?" "I'm in. I made some tea." She walked into the house as if there were never any distance between us. Her eyes scanned the cozy living room, still adorned with the photo of our Mexico trip last year. Me, Ethan, and Madison. Standing close together, laughing like 3 people who believed in a carefree future. "I'm sorry I haven't reached out," Madison began after a few minutes of silence. "These past few weeks have been so chaotic. I was worried about you, but I didn't know if I should interfere." My eyes searched her face, unsure if anything of the old Madison was still there. "Ethan's been so distant," I whispered. "He does lies about little things. He forgets stuff. He comes home late. One time, I smelled a strange perfume on his shirt." Madison pressed her lips together. I saw the tension in her jaw, though her eyes tried to hold compassion. "Have you talked to him about it?" I shook my head. "I'm afraid if I ask, he'll think I'm just being paranoid." And if it's true, I'm not sure I'm ready to hear it. Madison placed her hand over mine. Don't blame yourself. Sometimes men, they have shadows inside them we'll never reach. I nearly laughed at how she said that, as if she weren't the very shadow he'd invited in. I gently pulled my hand away. Maybe he really is seeing someone close. Someone he feels safe with, maybe. A mutual friend even. Madison blinked. A flicker of pause. She was choosing her answer. Do you think it's someone we know? She asked, trying to stay composed. I don't know. But I feel it, and that feeling's never been wrong. I stood up, walked toward the bookshelf, pretending to search for something. Really, I just wanted to shift positions, so the hidden camera in the wall clock could get a clearer view of Madison's expression. When I turned back, she was spinning the teacup between her hands, eyes lowered, as if trying to stay calm beneath an unspoken question. I don't have any real proof, I continued, voice trembling, but I want to start looking into investment condos, just in case if anything happens, at least I'll have a way out. Madison looked up, eyes wide. You mean divorce? I don't want that, but if the worst happens, I can't walk away with nothing, right? Her head tilted in a reluctant nod, as if unsure whether to agree. A small gesture, but enough for me to understand. She was afraid. Not afraid I knew the truth, but afraid I was preparing to live without Ethan, and if that happened, all of their hidden plans could unravel. You know the lakefront condo development? I asked casually as if it had just occurred to me. I remember you mentioned it once. I think they built a new building? Madison pursed her lips. Yeah, it's near my place, but the prices are a bit steep, not sure it fits you and Ethan. I tilted my head. Why not? She hesitated. I just mean, it's mostly singles or young couples without kids. I figured you'd want somewhere quieter. A flimsy excuse, completely unnecessary. But the way she rushed to shut it down confirmed what I already suspected. That was the place where they planned to begin again. I pretended not to notice. Thanks for the tip. But I still want to check it out. You never know, it might fit. Madison looked down, sipped her tea. She was calculating, and in that silence I could feel it. Control was slipping from her hands. After she left, I walked her to the door with a weary smile. Thanks for coming, I said softly. No matter what happens, I'll always cherish this friendship. Madison squeezed my hand. Same here, always. As the door shut behind her, I leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. The pain no longer spilled out as tears. It flowed inward, quietly, becoming the fuel that kept me moving forward. I went to my office, opened my laptop, and saved the full recording from the hidden mic in the living room. Madison's voice rang out clear, each word laced with worry, caution, and something else. Almost fear. She knew I was getting closer to the truth, and that was exactly what I needed. Before the meeting with Madison, I had tested a risky move, a light nudge at their pride. Just enough to see if their masks might slip. I created a new email address nearly identical to the domain of the bank Ethan and I used, just one character off, enough to fool anyone scanning in a rush. I drafted a message posing as the transaction verification team. Dear Mr. Ethan Carter, we require confirmation of the deposit transaction for the Lakeshore Vista Residence condominium, listed under yourself and co-owner Madison Blake. Please respond by Friday to avoid temporary account suspension. I sent it out Wednesday morning. 12 minutes later, I saw Ethan rush into the bedroom, phone to his ear, his voice low but clearly panicked, captured by the camera hidden in the bedside lamp, streamed straight to my computer. Did you get the email from the bank? Ethan asked urgently. But how did they know my name? I never signed anything. Madison's voice was tense like a pulled string. Maybe from when you sent the draft contract. They could have matched the info. Damn it, if Natalie sees this... She doesn't know anything, Ethan, relax. Stick to the routine, don't give her anything... No, he snapped. She's been weird lately, too calm, like she's waiting for something. I froze at those words, not out of fear that he was catching on, but because he still thought he had time to fix it all, and that was his mistake. The lakeside cabin was where I once dreamed of growing old with Ethan, where we talked about the children we hadn't yet had, about winters reading by the fireplace, about the little boat we'd push into the lake on summer mornings. He said that place was a peaceful slice of the world, and I believed him. Believed it enough to use my entire first-year manager bonus to make the down payment. And now, that same place was where Ethan and Madison had chosen to begin a new life. One that didn't include me. I made a decision. If they wanted to start there, then I would end everything there. I sent an invitation to Ethan and Madison, framing it as a night of reconciliation. I want us to talk one last time, I texted Ethan. At the cabin, no yelling, no tears, just 3 adults facing the truth. Ethan agreed quickly, too quickly as if he too had been hoping for a chance to settle. Madison was more hesitant. But when I sent a short message, I want to apologize if I ever seemed distant with you, she nodded. They didn't know that the cabin had already been quietly transferred to my name. Within a week of discovering Ethan had forged my signature, I had already reclaimed the cabin, legally through a company Sophie helped me set up. I didn't wait for the court's decision. I reclaimed what was mine, legally, thoroughly. That evening a cold wind swept across the lake, stirring the dry branches already beginning to turn. The cabin lights glowed a soft golden warmth, a perfect illusion for people who still thought they were in control. Ethan and Madison arrived together. They stepped into the living room where I had set a light meal, scented candles, and a large screen hanging quietly above the fireplace. Madison glanced around, eyes darting. Is anyone else coming? I smiled. They will. Right then, the back door opened. Sophie, my attorney, stepped in with a polite nod. Behind her was Travis, my cousin. And finally, Mr. Daniel Stone, the CEO of the advertising firm where Madison worked as a creative director. Madison froze. What is this? Ethan growled, gripping his wine glass. I kept my voice calm. Just dinner, with people who need to see the truth. I pressed the remote, the large screen lit up, a video began to play. Ethan walking out of the boutique hotel at 3 a.m. holding a jewelry box. Photos of hotel receipts. Credit card transactions. An email scheduling a meeting with a realtor at Lakeshore Vista residence. Then the recording. Ethan calling Madison after receiving the fake bank email, both of them panicking, both scheming. Natalie doesn't suspect a thing, he said. We've got time. Finally, the image of the ruby earrings, side by side. The original and the duplicate. Madison pulled her hand from Ethan's and stood up abruptly. This is an invasion of privacy. You recorded us without permission. Sophie rose and replied gently. Inside her own home. Under suspicion of fraud and infidelity, my client is fully within her rights to gather evidence. Daniel, Madison's boss, said nothing, but his eyes turned ice cold. I turned to him, composed. Sir, I trust your company doesn't encourage senior employees to use paid leave to meet with their affair partner, especially while that person is forging their spouse's signature to transfer shared property. Madison went pale, her lips trembling. Natalie, I'm so sorry. I raised my hand. Don't use the word sorry like it still means anything to me. I reached into my bag and took out 2 envelopes. One contained the finalized divorce papers with clear terms, equal division of assets, Ethan held financially responsible for the cabin, and full reimbursement for the stolen jewelry's value. The other was a formal ethics violation report, fully documented, with copies already sent to Madison's company board. I placed both on the table and pushed them forward. You have 2 options, I said quietly but clearly. Sign and step away silently, or drag this deeper. But if you choose the second path, I guarantee every piece of evidence goes to court, to the insurance companies, to the press, and to anyone who might care about your reputations. Ethan stood motionless. His hand trembled slightly. For the first time, I saw him break character. No longer the calm, composed man he always pretended to be. Madison collapsed back into her chair, face buried in her hands. But there were no tears. Maybe she understood. She had gambled and lost. As for me, I simply stood, picked up my wine glass, and walked out to the open glass doors, where the cool lake wind brushed my shoulders. I don't remember the exact moment Ethan signed the divorce papers. Maybe because I was no longer focused on his handwriting but listening to the things left unsaid, the pride crumbling in his eyes, the panic on Madison's face as Daniel quietly walked out of the cabin without saying goodbye. No more words were needed, everything was in place. The old order was broken, and I, the woman they once assumed was the weakest, was the last to walk out of that cabin, with full control over my future. Madison was suspended from work 3 days after that night. I didn't send the report. I didn't need to. Daniel's presence at the cabin, seeing firsthand what she had done on company time, using company resources, was enough. Word spread fast. A few former coworkers who had been on old marketing projects with me called to ask, "Natalie, did you hear what happened with Madison?" I think everyone eventually has to pay for their choices. It wasn't about revenge. I had simply outgrown the need to hold on to what was never truly mine. Ethan tried to negotiate at first. He texted me at 2 a.m. "We had good years. Do you really want it to end like this?" A week later, he called. His voice was tired. "I'll sign, but I'd like to see you one last time." I hung up. Some things, once they're over, don't need to be said again. Truth doesn't need repetition. It only needs to be acknowledged. Ethan signed the divorce settlement accepting every unfavorable term, a 60-40 asset split in my favor, full reimbursement of the cabin expenses and repayment for a joint loan he had misused. I sold the cabin just a month later. The buyers were a young couple from Seattle, newlyweds. They asked if I wanted to keep the wooden porch furniture. I shook my head. Let it go with the old dreams. I didn't need them anymore. The money from the cabin sale and the divorce settlement was enough for me to leave Chicago, the city I once thought I'd grow old in. I flew to California at the end of spring, when the beaches were still quiet and the waves hadn't yet turned restless. I rented a small apartment near Santa Cruz, tucked between rows of palm trees with a balcony that faced the Pacific Ocean. Every morning I woke up to the sound of waves and the scent of green tea I brewed myself. I began teaching yoga at a local community center. Just a small class. A group of middle-aged women, some divorced, some still stuck in long, empty marriages. They didn't ask many questions, but sometimes after class, one of them would linger, sit beside me and whisper, "Today I finally felt like I could breathe again." I knew that feeling. I had once struggled to breathe too. I don't know where life will take me next, but one thing I know for certain, I'm no longer afraid. No longer waiting to be validated, and no longer hoping for anyone's apology. I still remember the first morning after I fully moved into the seaside apartment. The sky was strangely clear. Sunlight streamed through the thin white curtains, gentle, as if trying to soothe the rough years I had lived through. I sat on the balcony, ginger tea in hand, looking out toward the horizon where the sky met the ocean. The breeze was salty and soft. No one called my name. No bank alerts. No messages from Ethan. No more straining to hear the lies hidden in kind words. 6 months after that night at the cabin, I happened to see Madison on the beach in Santa Cruz. She was walking with a well-dressed man who looked more like a business partner than a romantic one. The two of them passed right by me as I was teaching an afternoon yoga class. Madison saw me. Her eyes froze. For exactly 2 seconds. I didn't nod, I didn't smile. I simply continued guiding my students into the boat pose, my voice as light as the breeze. And she turned away, without a word. Maybe she was ashamed, maybe she felt relieved that I didn't drag the past into a crowded beach, but I felt nothing. Maybe forgiveness isn't a decision, it's a process. When your heart no longer clenches at the sound of someone's name. When you no longer need justice from their lips, because you've already found it within yourself. I still write. My first book is almost done. The working title is Peace Doesn't Ask for Permission. Some nights I stay up late, revisiting every conversation, every glance, every mistake I once let slip by. I don't write with resentment, I write with understanding, washed through tears, quiet and deep. Travis once asked me, if you could go back to the moment you first realized you were being betrayed, would you want to know? I thought for a long time before answering. Yes, I said. No matter how painful, I'd want to know. Because without that truth, I might still be smiling inside a life built on lies. And I don't want to live like that. One weekend afternoon, I got a text from Sophie, my attorney. She was traveling nearby and asked if she could stop by my yoga class. I said yes. She came, carrying a bottle of white wine and the kind, knowing eyes of an old friend. After class, we sat on the sand, our feet in the waves, and I told her about the women in the group. Anne, 60 years old, divorced after 35 years of marriage. Karen, who'd been financially controlled by her husband. And Rosa, who never spoke, just showed up, unrolled her mat, and breathed deeply. Their silence has taught me more than any MBA course ever did, I said. Sophie laughed. And here I thought you were writing a book to help others. Turns out, they're the ones healing you. Because some things we only understand after we've broken open. Only then do we truly feel the strength of starting over. I haven't met anyone new, and to be honest, I'm not sure I'm ready. But some evenings when I sit by the window with a book, I no longer feel lonely. Maybe because, for the first time in a long time, I don't need someone else to prove I'm worthy. I've already proved that to myself, and this time, not through sacrifice, but by stopping. Not through words, but through choices. I don't know if you've ever been through something similar. Betrayal, feeling lost, losing yourself in someone else's false tenderness. But if you have, if you're still walking through the darkness, I want you to know, peace doesn't come from how others treat you. It comes from how you choose to hold on to yourself. If you've stayed with me until now, perhaps you too have walked through loss, difficult choices, and the journey of rediscovering yourself after everything fell apart. What do you think of this story? Of how Natalie faced betrayal? If it were you, would you choose silence, forgiveness, or stand up to reclaim your worth? I'd truly love to hear your thoughts, even if it's just a short reflection or a feeling you had while listening. And if you'd like to keep following real emotional journeys about family, marriage, and the quiet strength of everyday people, please consider subscribing to the channel. One of the stories to come might just be the missing piece you've been searching for. Thank you for staying until the end. I'll see you in the next story.